You're listening to Your Calm Parenting Path. I'm your host Nina, a mindful parenting coach and mum, here to help you go from overwhelmed and reactive to calm, confident and connected with your kids. This show is for parents who want to raise their children with more patience, less stress and a whole lot more joy. Because small shifts make a big impact and you can build the parenting life you've always wanted. If you want to see what I'm up to, follow me on Instagram at Mindful Parenting Lifestyle, and don't forget to hit follow or subscribe so you never miss an episode. Let's get started. Welcome back to Your Calm Parenting Path. I'm really glad you're here today. This podcast is a space to slow things down, breathe a little, and explore parenting with more awareness, compassion, and trust, especially when things feel confusing or hard. Which is why I am so excited for our guest today. Today I'm joined by Steph West. Steph is the founder of Starfish Social Club, and she brings decades of experience supporting neurodivergent kids and adults who care for them. Her work blends deep professional knowledge with a genuine respect for kids as they are, which is something that I really appreciate. I'm so glad to have her here today and to share this conversation with you. Steph, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Nina. I'm really glad to be here.
Excellent. So just to start off, tell us a bit about yourself and the work you do and what, I guess, led you to create the Starfish Social Club.
Absolutely. I started my professional career as a special education teacher, working specifically with students that had behavioral and social challenges. And so I was a teacher. I became a behavior specialist. I became an autism specialist. I was a school administrator, and I, at one point, was at a training listening to people talk about how they run social skills groups, and I decided, I'm going to do that.
Nice.
And so I did. I started my own business running social skills groups in my community where I live in the U.S., in Texas. And that was 10 years ago.
Wow.
So I was still working full time when I started, and then it kind of took off.
I bet it did.
So this is what I do. I do in-person social skills groups. I do Zoom social skills groups, and I have content that is available online for people who aren't able to be in a group, but still want to have access to the content.
Oh, I love that. So many different ways to kind of reach so many different parents and families based on their particular situation. That's so amazing.
I have a podcast as well. I do have free content, podcast. I have a book. I have a lot of resources on my website. I have some free courses.
Fantastic.
Really, my goal is for anybody and everybody to be able to get something that hopefully can help either their kiddo or them.
To get some support. Fantastic. What's your podcast called, Steph?
It is called Social Skills is Canceled, which is also the name of my book.
Yeah.
So I'm not doing new podcast episodes right now, but I have over 100 of them.
Fantastic.
So yeah, Social Skills is Canceled.
So that's a great name, and we'll link to that in the show notes so that parents can go and find those episodes as well if they really resonate with what you're saying today, which I'm sure they will. Awesome. Now, you talk a lot about children's relationship with stuff. So when parents hear that their child has a challenging relationship with stuff, what does that usually look like in real life? And do you have any examples that you might see, especially with neurodivergent kids?
Absolutely. And just to say, I have ADHD.
Okay.
So the things that I talk about when I talk about neurodivergent kids and stuff, it started through my own journey.
Right.
I have always had a challenging relationship with stuff. But one of the things that happens is that we don't see things through other people's perspectives until someone enlightens us as to their perspective. And so it took me until I was an adult to realize that I had a challenging relationship with stuff. I can remember as a child, they have these things that are hammocks that you can put stuffed animals and toys in.
Yep.
And I had two of those in my bedroom, two toy hammocks, and I had two cedar chests in my bedroom, just full of books and stuffed animals and toys and just all kinds of stuff. But again, it never occurred to me that other kids didn't have this much stuff.
Right.
It really wasn't until the first time I went to college, I went to the other side of the country and I took so much stuff with me. And just getting there and realizing I didn't need most of it. And then being married and living with someone who didn't have the same relationship to stuff that I did, that was really interesting to live with someone who had a very different relationship with stuff. And I remember conversations with my mom about having people come over to mine and my husband's apartment, and she was a little concerned about that. And so it really took me being in the world with other people to recognize that I thought about stuff differently than other people. And I absolutely would say that I'm a recovering hoarder.
Right.
At this point in my life, you would never know that. I've done a significant amount of growth and work in that area.
Yep.
But I absolutely understand the mindset and the mentality, especially from a neurodivergent perspective of where this comes from. And I think a lot of people who don't have that perspective see it as junk, trash, and just really struggle to understand where we're coming from. And so I think it's always important to realize that whatever side of the conversation you're on, the only way to move forward harmoniously is to really understand the other side.
Yep.
Whether you're a parent who has a kiddo who's struggling, whether you are the person who's struggling and you have a spouse who, the only way to move forward is to really understand the perspectives of the people around you.
It's having that empathy for their situation, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Putting yourself into their feet. And I guess because you were in their feet, it kind of puts you at an advantage to be able to help more compassionately and kindly with those types of situations, because you know exactly what it feels like, I guess, when you get rid of stuff, or when you want to keep stuff and someone's telling you can't have that anymore, you need to get rid of it, you're too big for that, or whatever. So, yeah, I can see you nodding along. And I think, having that perspective, your personal perspective, it just adds so much more to what you can offer in regards to that. So, well done for the work that you've done to kind of move on from that.
Thank you.
But I imagine it wasn't an easy journey, and being so open and sharing about it too is awesome. So thank you for that.
It's a never-ending journey.
Yes.
Because it's like any other struggle that anybody goes through, right? There are underlying reasons for it. And so you're not even really working so much on the stuff, you're working on the reasons. But it's like anything else. And so that's why I say I'm a recovering hoarder, because it honestly wouldn't take that much for me to fall back into it. I mean, to be honest. And it's a continuous, it's been several years at this point since I started working on it. I think it's been 6 years.
Wow.
And I mean, it's a never ending process,
Never-ending
especially
journey.
in the world that we live in, where we just have easy access to so much, so many of us do. And you had asked about what this might look like. I was thinking of an example that is actually kind of different from the typical kid with the room overflowing.
Yeah.
I had an adult student that I worked with several years ago. So she was mid-20s, and she, everywhere she went, would carry a backpack with an overflowing binder full of clippings and photos of her favorite anime characters.
Okay.
She would not go anywhere without it. And so every time she would come to our social group, she had it with her. Anytime we would go out and do things in the community, and she always had it with her. And the challenge became that she had a job.
Right.
She worked in a fast food restaurant, and it became an issue because when she would go to work, she would take up a table in the restaurant with her backpack because she wouldn't leave it at home. And so the employer approached her and her mom about it because now it's taking up a table in a restaurant. And so it's not even just bedroom private, close the door, nobody will know, or as an adult, just don't invite people over. It very easily spills out into the public. And again, it goes back to why.
Yes.
Why do we have such an attachment to these things? But I think that's such a great example of how it's not always things we can just shut the door on.
Yeah, that's really, really interesting. And I imagine there's examples similar to that of younger kids as well. But you spoke about the why, and I think that was going to be my next question. So, from your perspective, what's often underneath a child's intense attachment to objects, especially for neurodivergent or anxious children?
Yeah, I think there are several things that it can kind of come from. One of them that's very typical is that a lot of people who struggle with stuff, we see these objects, these items, as we have an emotional attachment to them. This is very common with people who struggle with social attachments because of autism, because of ADHD, because of bullying, because of whatever reason. We are more likely to form emotional attachments to things. You also see this with pets and animals.
Oh, okay.
Right? You hear about people who get into animal hoarding situations, and it's because it's an emotional attachment. Stuffed animals are probably the most common, regardless of age.
Yep.
It doesn't matter how old somebody is, a stuffed animal is the most common attachment that human beings form to stuff. But
Wow.
it's, an object doesn't judge, it doesn't argue, it doesn't tell us that we're bad or that we're wrong. It's always there, and it bears some sort of comfort. It also could have some symbolism to it in terms of who gave it to us,
Yeah.
or the time in our life that we were in when that thing arrived. So that's one of the biggest reasons is there's an emotional attachment to it. That
Yep.
most of the time, people who are emotionally attached to stuff are struggling to emotionally attach to people.
Right. Okay.
Another reason that it may happen is if we are operating in a scarcity mindset, we
Yep.
tend to hold on to things.
Mm.
So there will even be people who will hoard broken pencils, right? Like things that anybody else would look at. And why are you even holding on to that?
Mm.
Sometimes it comes from a scarcity mindset. It could be an adult holding on to clothes,
Yep.
maybe even clothes that don't fit anymore.
Yep.
But sometimes it's that feeling of, well, what if I let it go and then I need it? Or what if I run out of money and can't buy more of it?
It makes sense. When you think about it, it makes perfect sense, doesn't it? Like it's a logical
Yes.
way for the mind to go through in that situation.
Yes.
Mm.
And scarcity mindset is often tied to anxiety. So if you have a kiddo who's struggling with anxiety, they tend to go together. And so they're holding on to things because they don't want to risk not having it if they decide they need it or want it.
Yeah, yeah.
It might not even be, the need. Another one that's really interesting that I personally have is, let me see how best I can explain this. I find this difficult to explain to people who don't experience it. So let me see how best I can explain it.
Okay, we'll give it a go.
Neurodivergent people, there is a belief that especially autistic people are not empathetic. Sometimes there's a belief that they don't even have the ability to experience and feel empathy. And that is absolutely false.
Yeah.
What does happen is often autistic people will see something happening and they will feel the feelings and they don't know what to do with those feelings. They
Yep.
don't know how to help the other person. They don't know how to support the other person or celebrate, right? They don't know how to celebrate another person.
Yep.
So it is absolutely not the case that they don't have empathy. It's that they don't know how to show it often.
Yep.
And so one of the interesting ways that this will sometimes appear, and I experience this, is that we often feel empathy for inanimate objects, but especially objects that we think other people don't care about.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so going back to the broken pencils.
Yeah.
When I was probably third grade or so, I decided that my favorite color was going to be the color beige because I knew that no one else in the world would choose beige as their favorite color. Okay. And like it's actually making me a little bit emotional even thinking about it
Yeah, I can imagine.
because this is a real thing that we experience where we are drawn to things that we think other people discard and don't value. And so, even again, back to the people who hoard animals, right? They're often animals that have been abandoned or
Yep.
are injured or ill. And so we tend to hold on to and hoard things that we are worried that other people don't value. You might have kids who refuse to get rid of an article of clothing that's torn or stained or doesn't fit anymore.
Yeah.
Even I used to be a triathlete and I raced very often. And you get these safety pins to put your bib on your shirt. And I am incapable of throwing a safety pin away because it has value.
Yep.
Not monetary. It's not worth anything,
Yeah.
but it serves a purpose.
Yep.
And so I have a stash of safety pins that I can't fathom throwing them away because they have a job, they have a purpose, they have value.
Yes.
And so same, I have a pile of pens. Way more than I need, but why would I throw it away when it has value?
Yeah.
It's a pen. It writes.
Look, I think you've explained that so well because the way that you've explained it and with the background as well, these kids want to show empathy to something, but they don't know how to show it to people. So they want to show it to something that maybe hasn't had empathy before. And as you were talking, my son, he gets quite anxious about things and his favorite color is brown. And I often wondered why his favorite color is brown. And now, maybe it has something to do with what you're talking about.
That's very interesting.
My other two kids, their favorite colors are rainbow. They can't even choose their favorite color. And that's like me. I like all the bright colors in the sky. But his favorite color is brown. And so that's really interesting that you said your favorite color was beige. And I think, that might be why, because he knows that no one else likes that color and he wants to, be kind to that color.
Yes.
As weird as that might sound, it makes sense in the way that you've described it.
Yes, it does sound very weird.
Yeah.
But hopefully it sounds weird until I explain it.
Exactly.
Yeah. I'm glad that my explanation resonated because, to other people, that kind of hoarding in particular, I think, is completely illogical and irrational. But if you can see it through that perspective, we're trying to save things that no one else is trying to save.
Yeah.
And obviously there's a bit of a mirror there, right? We have felt abandoned, left out,
Yes.
misplaced. And so we're trying to keep other things in the world from experiencing that same. Yeah.
And in one way, that's the best kind of empathy, isn't it? I mean, not to rate empathy, but it's so fruitful and it's so empowering to them to be able to finally do this thing that's expected for them in social situations, but they can't do it, but then being able to show it in other ways. And
Yeah.
I think sharing that with parents and letting them know and reframing, I think it's so powerful. And I think it can make such a big difference on parents' experience and the child's experience, just having that common understanding about it.
Absolutely.
So that's really, really clever, really, really cool that you've been able to verbalize it that way. So hope that any parents or kids or, family members listening can really relate to that and really get an understanding of why these little kiddos do and experience things the way they do. I guess another question to think about is, how can parents tell the difference between a phase, a coping strategy, or a situation where they might actually need extra support and flexibility around their connection with stuff?
I don't know that I really think there is a difference between any of those things. I think whatever your child is feeling and experiencing, or that's what you're feeling and experiencing. That's what they are feeling and experiencing.
Yep.
And so I think my answer to that is it doesn't matter which one it is. I will say in my life, I have a person who always, no matter what I've been thinking or feeling or experiencing, just says, okay, just is supportive of whatever. As I
Yes.
mentioned, I have ADHD. I have some wild ideas sometimes about, I'm very much an idea generator. And so sometimes I've just got wild ideas. Just always says, okay. And the next day I may be completely off it.
Yep.
Like, never mind. That's, I can't believe we were even talking about that.
But he acknowledges it in the moment, which I
Yes.
think is the main thing, isn't it? Validates it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think especially a child who's neurodivergent, I would say support them.
Yeah.
You don't have to agree with what they think or how they feel. You don't have to understand what they think or how they feel. But I think we do have to respect people's experiences. And I think that goes for just people in general. I think the day I do a TED Talk, it will be about how we can save the world by respecting other people's experiences.
Yeah.
And so that would be the number one thing I would say, especially to parents, but also spouses, coworkers, anybody, is you don't have to like what other people think or feel. You don't have to agree with it. But I do think we have to respect it.
Oh,
And the only way that
yeah.
we can do that is by openly talking about it.
I love that. Yeah. I think that's so beautiful. And I think we often think we have to be on the same page as someone else to be able to have that kind and caring relationship, but we don't. We can have different opinions, different thoughts, different experiences, but just recognizing that they're different and then moving on, accepting it
Yes.
and being able to have that great relationship with the other person.
And I think there's a concept called the double empathy problem. And it refers to the fact that in most situations, neurodivergent people are seen as the problem. And so even in my realm, in the world of social skills, the traditional approach to social skills is that the neurodivergent person is doing it wrong. And the double empathy problem basically says that this should be going both ways. Everything should be going both ways. And so instead of putting all of the focus on the neurodivergent person to be different, it should be going both ways. And so that's what I try to do in everything that I do is I really want to help my students understand the neurotypical social world because that's the world we live in. And so it's important that they understand it. But I also really want their parents to understand them and their teachers to understand them and them to understand each other. Because I think it's because neurodivergent people are the minority, we are often just expected to kind of do what everybody else is doing.
Toe the line.
Yes. But I think it's, again, every single person perceives the world differently. We all do. And the only way to know what someone else experiences is to have that conversation.
Exactly.
There's no other way to know how other people experience the world other than talking about it. And so, yeah, I think it's even, it's obviously common for neurodivergent kids to have neurodivergent parents, right? There's this whole hereditary aspect to it.
Yeah.
But if even among that, you still have very different perceptions and experiences.
Yeah.
And so just because a child and a parent are autistic doesn't mean they understand each other's experiences because they're not the same person.
Exactly.
And so I think it's for everybody just to be able to have these conversations and understand someone else's experience of the world.
Yeah. And I think the more we speak about it in this kind of setting, in podcasts, sharing it on social media, making it more common that we do talk about this and it is an open thing and it's not something that needs to be shamed or it needs to be talked about in whispered comments, on the corner. The more open we can be about it, the better it will be for everybody, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And I guess on that kind of topic, parents can sometimes feel embarrassed or judged or isolated because of how their children relate to stuff, but then also, some other facets of their neurodiversity. What would you want them most to hear after this conversation today and kind of take home about those feelings of embarrassment or feeling judged or isolated?
I want to preface this by saying I'm not a parent. So I try to be mindful of not coming across like I'm telling parents what they should do because I'm not a parent. I do think I grew up as a difficult child. I wasn't diagnosed with ADHD until I was an adult, and I had behavior problems. I had just all kinds of stuff going on, especially at home. And I think the longest relationship a parent will have is with their child, right? With the people in their immediate family, spouse,
Yep.
child, not the people you are running into in public. And so I think preserving the relationships inside the nuclear family should be the priority as
Yep.
much as possible. There's also, going back to my example of my student who had the backpack and the binder, the way that I support my students with social stuff is I help them understand the social consequences of the choices that are being made. So, for example, this student with her binder, you can absolutely keep taking this to work if you want to. You are most likely going to lose your job if you do that. So it's your choice.
Yep.
But I need you to understand the social consequences of this choice. And so it's the same if we're talking about hygiene, which is a really big topic. It's the same if we're talking about how we talk to other people, whether we're even talking to other people, whatever topic we want to take. I see my job as helping my students understand the social consequences of it.
Yeah.
And then they get to make their own choice. They can decide whatever they want to do. So if it's a situation where a child's relationship with stuff is having an impact on the family, that's a conversation that needs to be had, again, with everybody sharing their perspective, because everybody's coming at it from a different perspective. But that child won't be able to do anything differently if they don't understand how it's affecting other people.
And like you mentioned at the start of our conversation, they need to be told that. Well, they may need to be told that because they can't see it from someone else's perspective.
Yes.
So that's why that conversation piece is vital. Yeah.
Yes. Most neurotypical people understand from a pretty young age the concept of everybody having a different perspective, different thoughts, different feelings.
Yeah.
Neurodivergent people sometimes never really understand that. And so, in my opinion, this is why a lot of our kids struggle so much when they hear no, because they weren't expecting to hear no. If I want to eat another cookie, if I want to stay up late, if I want to go, to the park, I'm in a yes mindset. Like I'm in a, let's do this. And so when someone else has a different thought about that, that's confusing.
Yeah.
And I think that's why so many of our kids struggle with being told no, is because they don't understand the other person's perspective and that it's different.
That's such a good point.
And so, yes, there's no way for your neurodivergent kiddo to know how their choices affect you unless you have that conversation with them, right? There's no way for them to know, especially if they're younger, or especially if this concept of other people's perspectives is just difficult for them. We just assume so much.
Don't we?
So much.
Yeah.
We assume everything's about us. We assume that things are negative. We assume that people know exactly what we're thinking and how. We just assume so much. And I think it's, again, TED Talk pending.
Go.
If we just have conversations with each other about everything. Just understanding that nobody knows what you're thinking unless you tell them.
Beautiful.
And I think we spend way too much time assuming.
Yep.
You should know how I feel about that.
Yeah. Can't you tell? Yeah.
Yes. Or you're old enough to know.
Yes. That's a good one, isn't it? You're old enough to know this. Why don't you know this already? Yep. One question I always ask my guests at the end of an interview is one small shift that can create a big impact for parents supporting kids who have these challenging relationships with stuff. I feel like you might have already told us, but if you have any other comments that you'd like to add to a small shift that parents can make, I'd love to hear it.
When it comes to the topic of stuff, the best place to start is with what's coming in. So let everything that's already in, let it be. Stop things from coming in. Starting right now. Stop bringing things in. With kids, this is very challenging because you're not the only person responsible for things coming in, especially around birthdays, holidays, right? But this, to me, is the best place to start if you want to support your kiddo with stuff, is how can you help them from having more come in?
Beautiful.
And then once we have systems in place for that, we can start to work on what we already have.
Yeah.
But that means conversations with grandparents. That means conversations, especially if you have a split household with maybe parents who aren't living together. I mean, it's helping everybody understand that we are trying to do what's best for this child. And this child struggles with stuff. And in order to help them with that, we have to stop bringing in so much stuff.
Yeah.
I don't have anxiety about many things in life, but I get so uncomfortable when people give me things. And of course, in our world, that's one of the best ways people have for showing that they care about you and that they're thinking, right, is to give little gifts. And oh my gosh, it's so difficult for me to handle. I don't want to, please don't give me anything for my birthday, please just don't.
And people's reaction is, but why not? I want to give you something,
I am generally upfront about it. And I will say, I am a recovering hoarder. Please do not add anything to what I'm already working through. I generally am just upfront and honest about it. But it hurts people's feelings. Even a couple of days ago, I had moved and my mom asked me for my address. And I said to her, my mom she's a gift giver. And I said to her, I will give you my address as long as you promise not to send me anything. And I was very serious about it. Please do not send me anything. So I have to have my own boundaries around it. But if it's a child, they're not able to do that.
Yeah.
They're not able to have their own boundaries about it. And so as the parents, we have to be the ones to help with that.
Yeah, beautiful. I think that's a really good place to start. Okay, so did you want to talk about your social club? Because I saw there was an option to start a social club. Would you like to talk to that in case people in Australia want to do it too?
Yes. And Australia is my favorite country in the world. So I would love to have more of me's in Australia.
Cool.
So I do have an option for people who want to do something like what I do. It's not a franchise, so it's actually not tied to me at all. But I have one option where I can help with business coaching. If there's somebody like me is sitting in an audience thinking, I want to do that.
Yeah.
I have an option for business coaching for a year where I can help people start and run their own club like mine. Like I said, in a couple months, it will be my 10-year anniversary.
Wow.
I've been doing it for a while. And then I have an option where people can license the curriculum that I teach, which I created. It's my own curriculum.
Fantastic.
It's copyrighted. So I have an option where people can get licensed to teach my curriculum. And so people can do one or the other or both together.
What a fantastic offering.
So if there are people who already are working with kids and just don't know what to do for social, that's where my curriculum is really helpful. If there's people who are like, I really want to start a business doing this, then that's where the coaching comes in.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I would love for what I do for everybody in the world to have access to it. I think it's the coolest thing I've ever done.
Oh, I love that.
And I
can see your passion coming through for what you do. And I think I wanted to share that particular part of your business because I'm sure there's parents out there that would love to get involved in something that is going to help their kids and start a little community somewhere around Australia. And so I really wanted to make sure we touched on that in our chat today because it's such a great service that you offer. So that's fantastic.
I actually get quite a few emails from people in Australia.
Oh, really?
And even on the podcast, I think it's my number 3 country.
Wow.
It's US, Canada, and then Australia. So it's interesting. And I know you guys have the
NDIS?
Yes, right. And like, we don't even have anything like that here. So my program is all private pay. So to have it in a place where it's paid for, oh my gosh, yeah.
Yeah, amazing. I just think supporting families with neurodivergence, I think now that it seems to be a lot more mainstream, a lot more common, a lot more talked about. And so having opportunities to help whenever we can, I think is great. And I honestly think that soon neurodivergent is going to be more prevalent than neurotypical, and it's going to switch. I do think that's what's going to happen in the future, only because we're more aware of it now and we know what it entails. Not that there's more, but we just know more about it now. So yeah, that's my prediction for the future.
Yeah.
All right. Well, are you on social media? Where can people follow you and find out about your book and things like that?
The website would probably be the best, and the website links to everything else.
Well, I'll pop the link in the show notes so people can find you there, subscribe to anything, look up your book, look up starting a Starfish Social Club, and I think that will be great. Well, thank you, Steph. It has been lovely chatting to you today, and I really think that you would have made some impressions on families that are listening to be able to make some changes. And if you're listening, thank you for being here. If this conversation resonated, I hope you'll take a moment to notice what landed for you and maybe offer yourself a little extra kindness today. Parenting is complex and you're doing the best you can with what you have. If you found this episode helpful, feel free to share it with another parent who might need it or come say hello over on Instagram. Until next time, take care and I'll see you back here on your calm parenting path. Thanks for listening to Your Calm Parenting Path. I am so glad you're here. And I hope this episode gave you something useful to take into your parenting journey. If you'd like to dive deeper, sign up to my mailing list at mindfulparentinglifestyle.com.au for more tips and insights, or book a free chat to learn how we can work together. And don't forget to hit follow or subscribe so you never miss an episode. I look forward to speaking with you next time on Your Calm Parenting Path. And just before you go, I want to share something with you. If sibling conflict has been feeling really present in your home lately, the arguing, the competition, feeling like you're constantly stepping in, you're not alone in that. I'm running a free workshop called Why Sibling Fights Feel So Hard and What Actually Helps on April 29th, where I'll gently walk you through what's often going on underneath those moments and how you can start responding in a way that feels calmer and more connected. There will also be a replay available so you can listen or watch in your own time. If this feels like something you need right now, you can find all the details at mindfulparentinglifestyle.com.au/upcoming-events. I'd really love to support you with this.